Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Lisa, and today I wanted to go over our 2024 harvest totals from our garden. If you have been following us for any length of time, and even if you haven't, let me explain to you why I do this. When we lived on the East Coast, we gardened and all that. That was before we did homesteading, and gardening was much different there for us. It was easy, no problem. So then we moved to South Dakota in 2020, started our homestead for obvious reasons we've gone over before, and we have had 5 years of relearning how to grow things for this area. We are at an elevation of 5,318 feet above sea level. We have a very short season. We are technically 5B now, or 5A, but we used to be 4B. I stick with 4B for my knowledge and purposes because we are a microclimate where we live. And so the temperatures of the 4B zone really captures what we're dealing with a lot better. So last year I started tracking our harvest because I had a lot of frustration with gardening here, and I wanted to see if growing things here was actually worth my effort, because a lot of effort goes into growing here and also a lot of expense. It's not as easy as just throwing a seed in the ground for us where we are. So with all of that being said, I grew last year 119 pounds, 12.3 ounces of stuff from our gardens. And the goal this year was to double it. So now that you have the background, I'm going to get into our totals. So I'm quickly going to start with our yields for this year. And I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. So I know they sure did surprise and excite the heck out of me. And then I'm going to go into some of the struggles we had, some of the things we will not be growing again, and roughly some of the costs, just to give you an idea. But I'll quickly run down the produce now. So we grew 1 pound of asparagus. That's been a many-year project. 2 pounds, 13.9 ounces of rhubarb. I even planted more this year because I found that rhubarb barbecue sauce that I love. We did 4 pounds, 2.7 ounces of onions, 2 pounds, 7.9 ounces of garlic, 3.9 ounces of scapes, 2 pounds, 1 ounces of bush beans, carrots, 12.9 ounces of stubby little carrots that went right to the pigs. We planted carrots a bunch of times, and I'll get into that later. Cucumbers, 78 pounds, 14 ounces. Zucchini and yellow squash, 82 pounds, 3 ounces. Raspberries, those are the summer raspberries, not the goldens, which I'll get into later. 2 pounds, 7.1 ounces. Our best raspberry year yet. Cauliflower. We grew the most beautiful cauliflower this year. They were gorgeous and sweet. 22 pounds, 2.9 ounces. Potatoes, the worst crop this year ever, and I think we're not going to grow potatoes next year. 6 pounds, 3.8 ounces. Usually potatoes are one of our largest crops. Broccoli, 13 pounds, 8 ounces. You guys remembered I said I was going to scream if I had cabbage. I don't know if you guys heard me, but I was screaming. Beautiful cabbage, 30 pounds, 13 ounces. Tomatoes. If you remember last year, I grew an amount of tomatoes and I wanted to double it. I think it's quadrupled or more at this point, but 117 pounds of tomatoes, 3.6 ounces. They're all frozen in the freezers, cored and washed, and waiting for water for me to do some canning projects with them. And last but not least, I also screamed with glee over 3 pounds, 7.4 ounces of Brussels sprouts. Yes, Brussels sprouts. So excited. So, reminder, last year I grew 119 pounds, 12.3 ounces. My goal for this year was double, 239 pounds, 8.6 ounces. How much did we grow? 370 pounds, 9.9 ounces. It was an epic year for the garden. We exceeded our goal by 131 pounds, 1.3 ounces. This is what I'm used to. This is what we wanted from day one here. So this is a 5-year goal in the making. I realize not every year is going to be like this, and that's okay. One thing I forgot to mention earlier was lettuce. I also did not weigh lettuce, but I have to tell you, we had lettuce from the spring throughout the entire summer until the frost. And it was non-stop lettuce. We gave huge grocery bags of lettuce away, along with cucumbers and squash and cabbage and tomatoes. And it just brought such joy to be able to grow something and grow enough to be able to bless friends with. So super stoked about all of that as well. This was the boost we both needed. And when I say that, Ryan always says, I don't know why you're doing this because we can't grow here. He's a believer now because we can grow here. Let's talk about some of the other things. So we tripled our harvest plus some by adding gardening space. I want to say doubled our garden space by adding the garden in the back, adding more raised beds, and then utilizing space efficiently. We are pretty much at capacity for garden space, and we won't be expanding. That's given our limited sunny spots. So we've got the 3 greenhouses, we've got the outdoor garden spaces. This year, if you followed us last year, the herbs and the petals and the other, the flower petals and all that stuff that I weighed last year, I didn't weigh this year. I quantified it, but I didn't weigh it. So they're not included here. The other thing is the preserve-fresh stuff will be in a separate video because it's just too much to do here. So let's talk a little bit about what we're not growing again. Radishes, peas, and spinach. They just haven't done well in the 5 years, and I'm done wasting my time with them. I've tried multiple times. I could be missing something. I'm just not wasting my time. Swiss chard, I grew. It attracted bugs this year, and it took so long to get going that by the time it was beautiful, it had leaf miners on it. Kale was the same way. Kale took forever. When it finally did what it needed to do, it was covered in flea beetles or aphids. I'm not sure. There were bugs all over it. I tore it out and I gave it to the chickens. Carrots, I may try one more time. We planted 4 times this year. They germinated well, which is usually the problem I see people having, but very stunted growth, not thriving at all. We amended the soil each time to try something different. We felt the soil was loose. We've only had one carrot harvest in the past 5 years that was good. We last planted some on August 24th, and they were a 60-day variety, and the greens are about that tall. So if you have any ideas, let me know. Potatoes. We had mice eating in both gardens, and of course the mice couldn't just eat one potato. They had to eat a piece out of every potato. I think we're gonna not plant potatoes next year. I think we wanna move onto something different because quite honestly, potatoes are cheaper than a lot of produce, and I'd rather fit in more expensive produce. I'm also hoping not to grow a lot of tomatoes next year, instead focus on something different like peppers maybe. So what was this season all about for us? This season we had the most pollinators we'd ever seen in the 5 years we've been here. We had bees, we had butterflies, we had all kinds of pollinators, really amazing. We also had the most pest pressure and critter pressure. So the mice eating stuff, we had a lot of pests in the garden. Obviously we had cabbage worms, but nothing ruined anything. I had one trapped cabbage that worked really well, and I let them have it. We still have some broccoli and one cabbage out in the back garden, and I'm gonna talk about that in a second. We had 2 major hailstorms. May 19th, which the only thing was out was the greenhouses and the IBC tote with the carrots. And then July 15th, all the gardens were out, and we were affected by hail. Some of the herbs never came back. It knocked all the main heads off the broccoli, but overall I think we did well. It's just that the main heads could have been a lot bigger, but they got knocked off. Our last frost was very late. June 19th, we had everything in the ground, thought we were in the clear, and we had a frost. A pretty hard one too. Thankfully, we covered everything, didn't lose anything. Our first frost was September 21st, and we harvested 32 pounds of green tomatoes, which have all since ripened, and everything else we could before it got hit. And then our last harvest of broccoli was October 18th. Golden raspberries, we ended up getting a few raspberries off those bushes, but the frost kind of killed their growth. We also harvested 178.6 pounds of Cornish cross chickens this year, plus the gizzards, livers, and hearts. We still have the 6 American Bresse, and that was because we had no water. We didn't feel comfortable processing them without running water because we wanted to be sanitary, so we added them to the layer flock. So that experiment kind of went out the window. So we'll see what next year brings. And then roughly costs. We spent over $200 in water from May until the present, and that is because we watered daily with a drought. The netting, the hail netting that saved us, because we would have been done mid-July, was $347. Worth every penny, because now after this year, it is an investment. Best thing we ever did. $35 in fertilizer. Next year we won't need that because we bought some at an auction that came in some of the lots that we got, and about $80 in starts and about $95 in seeds. Yes, I know those prices are high, but we see that as an investment. We just want to make sure it's worth it and we're getting our return on it. The seeds that I've bought some of them were high altitude seeds that did amazing. Some did not. Some of them were Baker Creek seeds, which tend to be more money, and that's okay. But what I need to get better at is seed saving. I do save some, but I just know that especially these two, the Cherokee Purple and the Martino's Roma, are prolific for us. So we're sticking with what works. There it is, our 2024 harvest. We already have our garlic in the ground for next year. A friend of mine, Gwen over at Broke Cowgirl Homestead, sent us garlic corms, which are a 2-year cycle for those. And we've got those in the ground. And we also have well over 100 cloves of garlic in the ground already. So fingers crossed for next year. So next year we're gonna try to do things a little differently, but definitely supercharged in the growing arena versus what it was the first 3 to 4 years. But I can tell you the hail netting has made the biggest difference for us. And although I realize that not every year is going to be epic and every year is going to have its issues, this made everything worth it. So thanks for watching. Thanks for coming along, and stay tuned for the Preserve Fresh, because you're going to be amazed at all we put away this year. Right now, I'm just waiting on the tomatoes to give you some totals. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks again for your support. Take care.